because if Tesla's $1.5 trillion valuation is based on AI, cybercabs, and FSD being ubiquitous around the world, then China is a key component of that.
Well, what I was saying is without China, there's no Tesla of today. So that's why it makes it really jarring to think even the possibility that Tesla will sell this to a potential entity. Who would it be? Who would take over?
Well, that in and of itself is, regardless of if it's Tesla, 1 million units in a market that already has a ton of overcapacity that many manufacturers are having challenges managing is really, really going to be hard for them to find a suitor that will pay a premium for that. Because if you think about it, GM and Volkswagen, they're shedding capacity in China. They're not adding capacity, they're shedding it. SAIC happens to be both of their partners. Begrudgingly, SAIC has agreed to shedding some of that. But we know that the SOEs are likely overcapacity. You would think that there would be maybe 1 or 2 people that would be curious about buying 1 million units of capacity in China. But I don't know if you're able to sell at a premium. And how much of a haircut are you willing to take on getting rid of that 1 million units?
So far, Elon Musk has come out on X, basically denying the news. Grace Tao, their VP for China, she's on Twitter denying the news. Even the foreign ministry spokeswoman, Mao Ning, she even kind of commented on this. So at this point, so there's this report and now there's been denial. And that's where we stand.
Welcome to China EVs and More. I'm Tu Li. Every week, my co-host Lei Xing and I break down the most important developments shaping the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. We give you an unfiltered, on-the-ground perspective, drawing on decades of industry experience, trusted relationships, and access across China and around the world. It's context you simply won't find anywhere else. Some of the topics we discuss come from my Sino Auto Insights newsletter. For even deeper analysis delivered directly to your inbox, subscribe at sinoautoinsights.substack.com. As always, nothing discussed on this show should be considered investment advice. Please do your own research, and if you value what we do, please like, subscribe, and share the show with your network. It makes a real difference and helps us continue bringing you the insight that keeps you ahead of this fast-moving industry. Lei, a late night Lei, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Lei. It's midnight, but also good morning from Beijing. This is your co-host, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode 256, a special midnight edition, noon Eastern edition. Tesla is in the headlines. A major potential blockbuster move happening or not.
Well, he denied it.
Believe it or not, there's actually 3 things that happened for Tesla this week. Very important things. So the 10 millionth Tesla was produced. And then Tesla just pushed out a major OTA in China to the customers now with Doubao large model voice, kind of like Grok, but now available for the Chinese market. And then
Doubao is ByteDance's
right?
AI model.
And then, I think earlier last night, US time, this Wall Street Journal article breaking out the potential possibility that Tesla has to either sell, spin off, or close down the China business.
What do you think?
Take it away. I mean, is that even possible? I mean, everything's on the table or not?
Well, there are certain requirements that are likely.
Well, first of all, what is behind this? Tell us. Why is this even considered?
Well, at the end of the day, conceptually, it seems like Elon wants to get out of the car selling business, car manufacturing business, number one. Number two, SpaceX, from the Wall Street Journal article, he wants to roll Tesla into SpaceX. And that means that there are certain restrictions that SpaceX, if you're going to sell to the government, need to be adhered to. One of those restrictions is going to be not selling or not having business in China. And I think that is what could be driving some of this, but I also look at this as a smokescreen a little bit, Lei, and these are my initial thoughts, initial reactions. Because I had actually heard that right after the SpaceX IPO that Tesla was not long for Shanghai Gigafactory. And I was like, I don't know how that would work. And so I just kind of left it at that. But we should look at the totality. Over the last few years, Tesla has done pretty well. There's about 1 million units of capacity, give or take. So let's say between 1 and 1.2 million units. And if we're looking at an 80% capacity utilization rate, that's 900,000, 800,000 units that need to be shipped every year, which means that either they're going to be domestically consumed or they're going to be a combination of domestic consumption and export. So if we're not looking at 75, 80,000 units a month consistently, then they're underutilizing that factory. And we also know that the Shanghai government has qualifiers in order for Elon to have such a sweetheart deal. They have to probably, and this is all speculative. I don't know the details of the contract, but I do know that there are employee requirements, hiring requirements, tax revenues, things like that. So these constraints make it very difficult for Elon to slow down production in Shanghai without severe penalties. And where I see the smokescreen, maybe the internal forecast for Tesla in China and the export markets were softening significantly towards the end of this year. And this was leaked in order to create a trial balloon and have Elon and Tesla own that narrative as opposed to being flat-footed with somebody leaking it. What do you think?
So at the bottom of this is basically the potential of the SpaceX and Tesla merger that sits behind everything of all the reporting. And SpaceX, I believe, have about 20% of the business from the US government. And if the two entities merge, then there's conflict of interest. So that's...
And let's be clear, SpaceX wants more. SpaceX wants a lot more from the US government.
And then let's give some context of how China is so important for Tesla. Tesla is the first automaker to get 100% to invest in a manufacturing autos in China, 100% owned. So a Wolfie. In the first half of 2026, shipment out of Giga Shanghai was 468,000 out of the 830 global deliveries that Tesla reported. So it's roughly half. And then out of those half, the 468,000, I think like 220, so a little bit less than half were exported. And there's more than 2 million Tesla owners, customers in the Chinese market. The prospect of Tesla saying bye-bye at this point, to me, is if Tesla is willing to give all of this up, to me is impossible. I can't see that happening. Especially if they just push out this snowball, right, to add to the features of this vehicle. But on the other hand, this potential merger... No, I was just going to say, but this potential merger, Tesla and SpaceX, I don't think it's out of the blue.
If we're looking at, if this is real and they're considering getting out of the China market, that indicates to me as well that maybe they don't have a ton of confidence that full FSD is going to make it into China.
Well,
because if Tesla's $1.5 trillion valuation is based on AI, cybercabs, and FSD being ubiquitous around the world, then China is a key component of that.
Well, what I was saying is without China, there's no Tesla of today. So that's why it makes it really jarring to think even the possibility that Tesla will sell this to a potential entity. Who would it be? Who would take over?
Well, that in and of itself is, regardless of if it's Tesla, 1 million units in a market that already has a ton of overcapacity that many manufacturers are having challenges managing is really, really going to be hard for them to find a suitor that will pay a premium for that. Because if you think about it, GM and Volkswagen, they're shedding capacity in China. They're not adding capacity, they're shedding it. SAIC happens to be both of their partners. Begrudgingly, SAIC has agreed to shedding some of that. But we know that the SOEs are likely overcapacity, the FAWs, the Chang'ans, and things like that. Because if you look at SAIC in and of itself, the EV brands that they sell in China, IM Motors, there's one or two other ones. We only see them in Shanghai. We barely see them anywhere else. And so those vehicles and those products struggle to sell in China. You would think that there would be maybe one or two people that would be curious about buying 1 million units of capacity in China, but I don't know if you're able to sell at a premium. And how much of a haircut are you willing to take on getting rid of that 1 million units?
So far, Elon Musk has come out on X, basically denying the news. Grace Tao, their VP for China, she's on Twitter denying the news. Even the foreign ministry spokeswoman, Mao Ning, she even kind of commented on this. So at this point, so there's this report and now there's been denial, and that's where we stand.
One thing that I think is really important to also note, Lei, is that remember years ago, I had said that without Tesla, the Chinese EV makers would not be able to support themselves. I actually still think that's the case. Tesla still brings a ton of excitement. Does BYD carry the China market? Does BYD plus Geely plus NIO plus XPeng, do those combined brands carry the market? I don't know if they can like Tesla does. And we're talking 600,000 units a year of China sales, but the impact on the China market the Tesla brand has is much more than 600,000 units.
And the fact that they've been able to help the ship afloat relatively, no major ups and downs. There's still the power of the brand continuing, even to this day.
Just think 3 years ago, maybe, there were rumors that they were trying to double capacity in Shanghai. Remember that?
Yes. But I think they're right at the capacity, right? So 468,000 multiplied by 2, it's close to 900,000. It's still pretty good, right? Compared to other ones, which are running at 30% capacity or less.
For sure. But they're trying to create a market. They're trying to create a market while they still have that demand, I believe.
The more immediate thing to look out for is whether the FSD will get some kind of approval in August, which is today is already August, by the way, my time.
In China, technically, yes.
In China, yeah. So
by 20 minutes.
Yeah. If that doesn't happen, then it certainly is going to be delayed until whenever.
Maybe, do you think this was a way of prodding the
certainly
agency?
Can be.
So it's a risky game that Tesla is playing right now.
It is, but you look at it from both sides, right? The potential merger, what it causes, potential conflict of interest and issues. And the other side is whether you want to give up in a market basically you've built and so important to your, at least on the EV part of it. Just to say that I'm going to exit is tough.
And here's the crazy thing, the cascading effect of offloading Shanghai Giga. The next question would be, do they close Berlin Giga? And that seems to me like it would be pretty tough to do because of the laws, the local German laws. But we know that the flexibility is created for Tesla by Shanghai Giga and being able to export from Shanghai to so many markets.
And the potential realization that we don't need the EV business at all. It's over. It's history. If we're AI, they have 10 million vehicles on the roads. Well, not yet. They just produced it.
Well, I'm going to qualify it by saying this. We're not willing to invest in the EV market anymore because of all these other things that we have going on. Because Tesla just decided that they didn't want to build or launch new vehicles, new variants, new anything. So that was a conscious decision that Tesla made, and they have not paid for it Model Y is still the best-selling EV in the world kind of thing, and, the Model 3 still sells a decent amount for how old it is, and, you wonder if they would have continued to invest in R&D and launch new products, how much more powerful and how much more in sales they'd have globally, but then you get into Elon having such a polarizing, effect on regions in the world where Tesla sells as well.
It's just a complicated matter, and the different stakeholders for this to even happen, the talks, the discussions, the arrangement that you talked about, Giga Shanghai being it with such a large capacity and some of the requirements, it's going to take some time before we see the next major update, if you will, on this. The breaking news are breaking news, but when do they materialize, if at all?
I think looking at September sales and seeing how much of that, let's say 80, 90,000 units of production is going to be exported, and seeing whether or not Model Y sales soften even further and or continued free financing for sales is going to be a very important indicator of how desperate they begin to get on wanting to offload Shanghai Giga, because the Shanghai government, in my opinion, is not going to release those requirements from whoever wants to acquire that facility in that capacity.
Later today, we'll hear more about the numbers for July that'll come out and see how much of the domestic sales versus export. I would expect that export will continue to drive sales for many of these brands. Cherries,
So
BYD.
when we talk about Tesla specifically, let's look at export sales to Japan. Let's just look at Tesla sales in Japan, in South Korea, in Australia, in the UK, in parts of Europe to see who's taking those exports, how much Canada is continuing to take, because 49,000 units, not a ton, but any little bit will help. And we know that they've aggressively priced the Model 3 in the Canadian market. So do they take a large percentage of that quota in July and August? We'll see.
Yeah, that will have an effect, yes.
Let's switch gears and move on to this little event that you went to in Beijing this week with our friend Lei Xing. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Where was it at?
Yeah.
How many people? International media? What's going on?
So, in retrospect, this is supposedly a tech launch event, and you want to be able to announce some kind of breakthrough technology. But in retrospect, actually, compared to the first one, which they had in December 2023, revealing the SU7, didn't think there was actually that much new tech, so-called new tech, being launched other than reconfigurable seating arrangement. I think that's the biggest selling point of this new SkyNomad series, which is their dedicated extended range platform.
Family.
And the larger SUVs. It was more of a stand-up comedy of Lei Xing interacting with their fans, owners, than the press, and more of that than a tech launch.
Let me stop you there.
Typical show.
Because normally these events, he announces other things. Was this only the SkyNomad?
Only the SkyNomad. Only the N90 Max and the N70 Max specs. And most importantly, at the very end, pricing, which was like people are shouting and wowing, and because the N90 Max, a 7-seater reconfigurable SUV, 5.285 meters long, 3-meter flat floor with a 2-meter sliding rail. The pre-sale price is just under 300,000 RMB.
So less than 50,000 US dollars.
Yeah. So the immediate comments I've heard from people around me, and including some of the employees, is now Li Auto can cry in the bathroom. It's a Chinese video saying that how much that potentially impacts, because this is the same size as the Li Auto L9, which is 500,000 RMB or around there.
Which is the same size as a Chevy Tahoe.
Roughly, right? 2.85 meter long. I don't know how long the Tahoe is, but it's big. And then the little brother, the N70, which is a large 5-seater, is 259.
That's L6,
900.
L7.
Yeah, L6. Now, the new L6 that just launched has just one price, which is 249,900. So these are pre-sale prices, by the way. The N90 will launch in early September and start deliveries. The launch price, I expect it to be probably 10,000 to 20,000 RMB lower than the pre-sale price. So we're looking at 280,000 possibly for this thing.
And when we're talking EREVs, everyone, we're talking battery packs that are still as big as normal electric vehicles or BEV, talking 70 something kilowatt hours.
Lei
So these
Xing
are not small batteries.
Lei Xing put a 76 kilowatt hour, that's an NCM battery, on the N90 coupled with a 60-liter fuel tank, gives a combined range of 1,705 kilometers, the highest on the market. And he was joking about driving the Shanghai to Beijing or Beijing to Shanghai with plenty of room left because it's about a 1,300 kilometer trip. And
we've done it.
And the name of the game is who has the highest, who has the best, who has the top. And Lei Xing again delivers at the most affordable, lowest price possible.
So the world is his oyster right now. He'd also announced that I think collectively U7, SU7 has shipped 500,000 units now. Is that right?
It's the number is more close to 750,000. Because
700, sorry, 700,000.
Yeah, like
that's
around
right.
700, probably by the end of this month, close to 750,000.
Just so we're clear, you had mentioned earlier, Tesla just celebrated 10 million.
10
They've
million
been a company since
BEVs, right?
They've been a company since 2003.
3.
Xiaomi started delivering vehicles in 2023.
2024.
BEVs only, or 2024. BEVs only, they're up to 700,000. So we're in a different place, in a different time, in different environment for BEVs and NEVs. But that 700,000 is probably at least twice as fast as a Neo or an Xpeng or a Li Auto. Okay. Firing on all cylinders, except that Xiaomi share price tanked after the event.
Here's the thing that you just mentioned. I think the key word you mentioned is different. Everything is different at this point in time compared maybe with 6 months ago, compared with a year ago, compared with 2 years ago. So the backdrop being Xiaomi is one of the last to go into the EREVs, especially these large EREV SUVs where the market is actually falling. So coming into this launch and the expected pricing, I've heard a lot of people say if they were to price this thing above 300,000 RMB, no chance. So I think they came into this with a lot of pressure on really pricing it to a point where you're in a market, a segment that's actually falling. Growth is falling. So what do? Then you have to play with the pricing, I guess.
And what's really important to point out, Lei, is that what's really important to point out is that the North American market, the U.S. market, is just getting into EREVs, or REVs, people will call them.
I think the EREVs will take off in the U.S. soon.
But it's kind of a bizarro world where the rest of the world is really, really focused on BEVs. And you're going to start to see Europe also likely focused a little bit more on BEVs, because before the EU had put tariffs on BEVs into Europe. Now they're going to also put tariffs on EREVs and PHEVs. And so BYD had a small window to shove a bunch of PHEVs into the European market. And that's what they did. But I think you're going to start to see more BEVs sales in Europe as that tariff hits. And then in the United States, the Dodge Ram truck is going to be a REV. The F-150 is going to be a REV or a hybrid, a REV. So we have this bizarre world where it's not in vogue anywhere seemingly except the United States.
Yeah. But also, Xiaomi had this program earlier this week. Again, checking out the factory. Actually went into the Xiaomi customization lab, which they opened, I think sometime late last year. Kind of like the Mercedes Manufacture or the Porsche individualization, where you can have your own colors, materials, trims, and then the factory visit. The factory visit is always interesting. It's my second time. The jarring thing is it's the orderliness and the cleanliness of the body shop that we visited. And the golf cart carrying people have to navigate a sea of AGVs. I don't see it maybe at the Neo F2, but I haven't seen that much of automation elsewhere, basically. And this is a 5-year-old EV business that Xiaomi has.
You raise a great point, Lei, because it's only 5 years old. They pulled the latest technology where a lot of other factories in China, there's existing technology that would need to be upgraded. So maybe that's where it's a slower burn. You know, FE2 is newer, but Neo factory is pretty old now relative to the Xiaomi factories.
If you look at the development time, the project started in early 2023. So they did go through 2 winters and 2 summers of testing, 3.5 years. They put in 566 vehicles into testing, and a lot of people are feeling this time of entry is a bit late. Hence, I think maybe some reservation on the stock price. I don't know.
And that's I think that's one of the things that gave the stock price a hit. I also think that the reconfiguration or the configurability of it's kind of more of a marketing thing, I believe, than an actual innovation that other companies will use it and take it and try to incorporate it into their vehicles. But I don't think it's like this game-changing thing.
No.
I think people were waiting for Xiaomi and Lei Xing to make some huge announcement or something like that. And it didn't happen.
I think it's more of a product feature innovation rather than a tech innovation, because we've seen suppliers, Zeekr Mix, there's some other ones that already offer this type of rotating seats. And then you have to think about the quality of these long rails, which are provided by Yanfeng, by the way, the electric power sliding rails. And then these other ones providing the seats. I think the seat frame is Forvia, and then Adient and Lear provides the seats. I think
the thing that's important to understand, what's also very important is that people that are sitting backwards will have to get used to it. Does that make them queasy? Some people will need to adjust. So is that going to be a feature that's used, or is it a feature that people like to say they have, but it never gets used?
Well, everything is only works in a park mode. You can't do it while it's moving.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yes. So,
no, I'm saying, but you can turn the seat around and then drive, correct? Or
no. I asked him about this. No, you're not able to drive. Let's say I'm facing forward and you're sitting in the passenger seat. You're facing back. No, that's not going to happen. Stationary.
Actually, much more limited than I thought.
Yes. No, but I was going to say one of the funny moments is Lei Xing was showing this picture of a family with the door opened 90 degrees, which is one of the features, the second row doors. And he's saying, well, this picture is of these families sitting in the car on the sand next to the sea. And he's like, we want the sea breeze to come through all the way because the door is open 90 degrees. One of the things that cracks you up.
So does it open and slide, or it only opens?
What do you mean?
Does it slide? Because 90 degrees, that means that you would have...
It's only open. There's no sliding doors.
Okay, because you would need, obviously, to not be parking next to anyone.
It is a 2-2-3 setting. And then two things they showed is typical Lei Xing style is doing this double tire blowout test at 160 kilometers per hour with 7 people in the vehicle and their CTO behind the wheel.
Yeah,
And
I
once
saw that video.
you
I
saw
thought
that,
that was a
right?
pretty good flex. I thought it was pretty big flex.
And then when the car went on the stage, they had 7 people come out, and then with 7 luggages, 20-inch luggages in the trunk come out. And then one of the guys was like 6'6" or something.
Well, remember the
Yeah.
LA Auto Show when the Gravity was unveiled, they had put in all those suitcases as well. So,
But I don't know. I think this thing puts the Gravity to shame, to say
what are
the
your
least.
reflections? No. Was there a lot of 国际媒体吗?
Yeah, well, there's the usual suspects who's
But
based in
not
China.
flown in.
No. I don't think there was any flown in. Just a local. There's a few German media outlets I saw, and mostly fans, owners, Chinese media.
So it's like Neo.
Yeah, and actually the auditorium they used at the Chongqing campus was smaller than the XPeng event. I think it was probably a few hundred people, not 1,000, I don't think. So relatively smaller. There's 3 different floors of the auditorium. So we were sitting on the second.
Do you get the impression that SkyNomad is like a Mona? Like a sub-brand?
It's a series because it's
Like
still
an old
got, I think
dynasty?
similar. I think similar because
Okay.
it's still got the Xiaomi badge. It's a series dedicated to the EREVs.
Well, he had emphasized that the U7 SU7 was the driver series.
Driver's
And
car.
then
And this is
the
more
SkyNomad family
to
car, family series.
family.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was I heard you're driving a new car.
So it's
怎么样?
the last few, I'll be leaving in less than 2 weeks. So I try to get as much hands-on, as much different variety of vehicles. And there's hundreds and thousands of them that obviously I can't do everything. But this is a unique case because the 4-letter Audi E7X, after having it for last couple of days, I'm very impressed with it, actually. In terms of the Momenta R6 ADAS, it's offering the typical German Audi kind of feel, but with the Chineseification of the smartification. I think it's well done. The only issue is the pricing. I think everything else is awesome. The ADAS is not so much worse than VLA or other ones. It is the best of both worlds. I think Audi did a good job, but branding wise, I'm not sure. And especially now, they're actually going in deeper because at the April Beijing Auto Show, they announced this technology center in Shanghai, which will take more of the development work for 4 new models coming. So there's 1 more model on this current platform, and then 4 new coming, I think, 2028-ish. Sales, it's been okay.
No,
Few
it's
thousand.
not doing well.
Better than
It's not doing
Mercedes.
well.
I'll say that.
So, yeah. So, well, you also saw that BMW
Well
announced that
done,
they're trying to lay off 8,000 workers, which is right around 5% of their staff. So,
yeah, it's solid.
I think if you
can tell that Audi tried hard to be what the Chinese smart EVs are, and it is.
Yeah, it's hard when you lost so much momentum, and it seems like a desperate move to create another brand. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. Maybe I should try to find out. I can ask around. I don't know if Audi, Four Rings Audi and AUDI Audi share anything.
Oh, that's the other complicated things about there's 3 different joint ventures for Audi in China. And that technology center hub is going to be the 4th one. So they have the North joint venture, they have SAIC Audi, which is this one. They have the 2 North ones. There's the FAW Volkswagen, there's the Audi FAW NEV. But they're committed. I'm speaking to their people, it seems that they're committed, at least on this
I don't know how you
years.
move
Next couple years.
faster by I don't know how you move faster by creating more bureaucracy.
Yeah. But the car itself is nicely done. I appreciate it, especially the assisted driving part of it. I'm pleasantly surprised that it's quite good.
Not to be outdone by its AUDI brother, the Four Rings launched the Q9, which is for the US market.
There has to be a 9 series.
Which is for the US.
Somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to try to sell it in China too, but it's $90,000 large SUV, a little bit smaller than a Tahoe. But I don't know if that 90,000 was announced pre-tariff or post-tariff, because it's going to be built in, I want to say, Bratislava, where a lot of luxury vehicles, I think the Macan and the Cayenne are built in Bratislava. But I just feel like they're not simplifying, and they're continuing to do the only thing that they know how to do, continue to complicate things, continue to add layers and muddy waters when they need to be crystal clear, laser focused, and have sprinter speed with how these changes are going to happen. Because my concern for them is that you can get rid of 100,000 people and still have the wrong strategy. Just because you get rid of 20% of your staff doesn't mean that automatically things are going to be different.
So actually, interesting, Volkswagen Group and Audi has almost the exact same setup in China. So Volkswagen Group has 3 joint ventures plus the VCTC in Hefei. And then Audi has 3 joint ventures plus the upcoming tech center in Shanghai. And then Volkswagen Group with XPeng, with Horizon Robotics.
So I learned, Lei, and you will smile when I say this, is 很复杂, like very, very complicated.
But I mean, earlier this week, we've heard the Germans reporting financial figures for Q2 and first half. And I think there's
silver lining for Porsche.
Porsche, right. I was exactly going over there. Not selling in China, but their profit went up by how much? 30-some percent?
Yeah. Their operating profit is 20 or something like that. Selling like more 911s.
Other ones are still under pressure. And then you mentioned about Oliver Blumen, right? His comments went so far as for the Volkswagen Group to put out a statement on his stance toward the EU tariffs on PHEVs.
Yes.
Earlier this week.
Which
it was actually Volkswagen Group China that shared that statement first to the local media.
Yeah. So that likely,
because I think it's partly
surprised some folks. Surprised some folks in China. And then the last thing I want to just mention is that GM and Ford. GM is doing really well with their latest quarter, selling more trucks. Now,
getting a visit from Trump.
Yeah, and then Jim Farley had an internal town hall and said that Chinese vehicles are likely going to enter the United States within the next 5 to 10 years. I don't know what it's going to take for the U.S. automakers, especially if they continue to print money selling trucks and SUVs, large trucks and SUVs. Again, still my concern is, can they disrupt themselves while they're making so much money? I don't know. Why don't we do this? I don't think there's a ton of comments, but let me check. MB617. What is the reason NIO doesn't ship ES8, ES9, and the latest generation of the others outside of China? Here in the UAE, they don't sell as they anticipate because most buyers want the main big SUV.
The answer is simple. One word will answer this question: profitability. Full-year profitability. So their export, I think Europe certainly is on what's called strategic pause. And their overseas exports, I don't think at this point matters that much in the short term. And if you look at why the reason they moved NIO Day to December is because they want to focus on sell. They don't want any distraction. Otherwise, it should have been held in September based on last 2 years. They don't have any new products come out the remainder of the year.
I'd also remind everyone that if they sell large volume or try to sell in large volume, they need to make sure that the foundation of swapping stations is already in place. Otherwise, consumers could be very, very disappointed, not in the product, but in the service, the capability or the ability to battery swap. So, because they lean so heavily on that feature. SSJJ005. To be honest, the new Xiaomi SkyNomad doesn't look as good as the U7 and SU7. So I don't know why they suddenly decided to go for an original design.
I probably half agree, half not agree. The positionings are different. BEVs, EREVs, large SUVs, sedans, kind of sporty performance, driver's car versus a family hauler, a trip, that type of thing. They actually made it different, separated the designs, and then very controversial because of the rear tail light looking like some other brand's vehicle.
Yeah, the rear end looks a little Zeekr-ish. I'm gonna put it much more simply. You like the SU7 than the U7 because the SU7 looks like a Taycan and the U7 looks like a Puro Sanquai. I'm being sarcastic, but not really. SPX Nomad.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's the next Land Rover, the e-tron Land Rover, Range Rover I drove.
Rumors of Tesla thinking selling Shanghai factory. Who will be prime bidders? My guess is Xiaomi and SkyNomad Auto. If true, will this catapult Xiaomi to global cross-industry juggernaut status? Also, the Xiaomi invest in battery swap operator. Adding to EV ecosystem news, how much does this validate the business case for BaaS model?
Again, I don't think it has to be a zero sum, and I don't think anybody has to validate anything. The NIO is going to go with their battery swap, which I think works for them. It's a nice strategy. Others doing other ways, I think they're fine. I just don't see conflict. That it has to be.
I'm going to quickly answer the Tesla question and we can move on, Lei. I think there's going to be, unless you want to add anything, there's going to be limited suitors. I don't believe Xiaomi will want to add 1 million units of capacity because there will be way too much pressure for them to sell that volume in a short period of time. And I'm not sure they're ready for that level of pressure. We've already seen that the Nomad N70 and N90 disappointed shareholders. So unless 2 or 3 more products are runaway successes in the next 12, 18 months, there would be no reason for Xiaomi to add 1 million units of capacity.
They probably sooner they will have to look at capacity outside of China than in China.
Yeah.
Because the next biggest thing that they're doing is launching in Europe next year.
Yep. SSJJ again. NIO cannot run a profitable business overseas. Please correct me, Lei and Tu, but unlike in China, where Wei Ning serves as a dedicated battery asset management partner, NIO's overseas business requires the company to carry battery assets on its own balance sheet. This creates a significant financial burden and constrains the scale at which NIO can expand internationally compared to its domestic operations. In China, for customers who purchase vehicles under the BaaS model, NIO collects the vehicle body priced directly from the customer and recovers the battery price by selling the battery pack to Wei Ning. As a result, NIO is able to recognize revenue equivalent to the full vehicle price, including the battery. Meanwhile, customers benefit from, this is a lot, to purchase price by excluding the battery. I'm not going to read everything. The 3-party structure creates mutually beneficial. It's also worth noting that NIO and CATL are Wei Ning's largest shareholders. I'd mentioned that NIO was going to have problems finding a third party to carry the batteries on its balance sheet outside of China. I'd written that in the newsletter, and we always have to remember NIO wants to emphasize battery as a service in China. They don't need to do that outside of China because you can charge that vehicle, okay? And if I were them, XPeng and BYD have announced they're going to invest billions of euros to build charging infrastructure. Piggyback off of that. If you want a quick way without battery swapping, because it's not an or, it's not battery swapping or charging, it's and. So in Europe, in the Middle East, maybe they lean into the charging part of it rather than the battery swapping part.
So NIO officially launched in Europe in 2022, I believe. They had a Berlin event. And since then, it's been kind of roller coaster, and now it's on strategic pause. So the next thing that they will have to do is a lot of it is because of this high upfront cost and investment into this direct sales model. And the vehicles themselves, to be honest, having to deal with Audi naming conventions, that takes efforts and cost, if not cost. They're expensive, some of the vehicles. I don't know whether they're competitive against some of the other existing local European ones, but at a certain point, they will have to rethink about what type of channel strategy, distribution back into the European market. And that's not the time right now because they want to focus on selling, and being profitable.
It takes discipline for NIO to not feel FOMO. I'm sure they're feeling FOMO, but that's discipline for them to not react. And they just kind of sort of figured out pricing in China for the ES8. So assume that it would take them a little time to find the right pricing model. And then that would also depend on, if you're in Europe, how much is Zeekr pricing at? How much is BYD pricing the Tong at? There's all these other things going on, because let's assume that the Chinese premium brands are going to always price below BMW, Mercedes, Audi in the European market. They still can't be more than their domestic peers as they ship and build in Europe. So building a solid foundation in the China market will create more flexibility for them elsewhere. Tom H. NEVs are projected to get 64.5% of the China market this month. What's the floor for ICE in China going forward?
So I think I mentioned the 70-30 rule, which is rapidly approaching. The ICEs, Li Bin said 90%, and then someone recently said 80% before the end of this decade. So you can kind of guesstimate. And the way it's going, that it's going to be faster than anybody predicts.
We always have to also think about behind the scenes what's going on, because all of the oil companies in China are state owned. And so they're not going to want to see adoption so high and ICE vehicles go away so quickly. And there's going to be some political wrangling going on behind the scenes, number one. Number two, if they get rid of so many ICE vehicles over the next few years, people have talked about 80%, 90%. That's fine, but we've already shed 7 million units. That means factories either need to be retrofit or they need to be closed. And we know that electric vehicles take less people to build. So how does China and the Chinese government reconcile that delta? If we have 30 million units of capacity, 50 million units of capacity for ICE vehicles, we need X number of employees up and down the supply chain. If we have the same capacity, but for EVs, is there a delta minus on the number of employees needed? And what's going to happen with that minus employee number? What are they going to do with those people? The central government thinks about this, but it's the provincial governments, the local governments that have to deal with the secondary and tertiary effects of this mass transition over to EVs. So to just kind of giving more background, at least how I understand it, than answering your question. But I hope that also lets you think through that, okay, it's not as easy as flipping this switch, although some companies would want to do that. Other companies and vested interests would rather see a gradual increase in adoption.
What we can be sure is the ICEVs are not coming back. And what is the realistic domestic consumption threshold in terms of how many NEVs are sold per year in China? What is realistic? That number may go down, which means, given the recent, we mentioned last episode, how many models were launched in the first half? 500, 600 models. I think the time is ripe for the Chinese auto industry is at a turning point where there's needs to be this, I don't know what the English is for, but this description of where you have to scrape the meat off the bones type of repair, if you will. because it's too involuted of pricing competition, product iteration. Every single day, there's multiple products launching. And then the exports.
Here's the other thing that is really important when we think about this, because if we see EV adoption move towards 80-90% over the next couple of years, what you're going to see is the Chinese VMs that are still building ICEs try to jam them into Latin America, Southeast Asia, Africa, emerging markets. They're going to try to export that rather than close those factories. So that's going to create alarm bells, and assume that these emerging markets, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa, will need ICE vehicles for the foreseeable future due to grid restrictions or constraints, due to investment constraints, not being able to build more chargers, not being able to accommodate more NEVs. So there's those knock-on effects to see if we're at 80-90% take rate in China. I bet you a ton of capacity gets dumped into Russia. So ICE capacity. So that's my thoughts. Anyways, that's all I have. It's late for you, so let's just end it here. Everyone else, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
Same here, likewise.